Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion, Women in Tech, Connecting, Innovating, and Empowering with AI. Today, we have Laura Hart, Senior Proposal Manager at Leidos, Aaron Reddick, founder of Chat Black GPT, Lisa Stanley, Project Manager at Active Resources, and Jocelyn Hartwig, Lead Consultant at Excella, joining us. My name is Chloe Norwood, and I am the Field Marketing Specialist at Visible Thread. Before we begin, I'd like to note the related free content box on your screen. We have included some free assets for you to check out. There will be a Q&A session towards the end, so feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation. And now I will hand it over to Laura.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. As Chloe said, I'm Laura. I'm a Senior Proposal Manager at Leidos, and I will be facilitating today's conversation. So today we're going to hear from three amazing technologists. All of them have a different background, different experiences, but all of them share enthusiasm for innovation, inclusivity, tech, and ethical usage of tech. And we're going to hear about all of those things today. But before we get into that, I wanted to invite each of our panelists to say hi. So welcome to our speakers, and it'd be great if each of you could give a brief introduction.
Yeah, I'll go first. That's okay. So I'm Lisa. I am a program manager for Active Resources. I actually retired from the military just a few short years ago, and I worked in Scrum team management as a Scrum Master. I've worked in several situations since as a government consultant with federal clients, and I'm leveraging AI right now in this call so that if you see my eyes moving to the camera, that's actually part of my camera feature. It's not actually my eyes looking at you. So just to trip you out, that's where I'm at today.
Jocelyn?
Hi, yeah, I'm Jocelyn Hartwig. Like Laura said, I'm a lead consultant from Excella, pretty focused on data and AI architecture on a couple of federal client teams. Throughout my career, I've played a lot of different roles amidst technology teams, from being a business analyst to a software engineer and AI engineer, and I'm really focused on AI architecture.
Okay. And Aaron, I believe you're up next.
Yeah, so my name is Erin. I come from tech. I have worked between Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta, and I left to do my own startup called Chat Black GPT to help with the tech divide and representation in artificial intelligence.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you all for participating today. And we also have a few poll questions for our audience. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer each of these, and throughout the conversation, there'll be a couple more questions as well. So we have 4 to start with to help us better understand our audience. So I'll be quiet for just a second, let you answer this. So are you currently using AI technology for content development? So the majority of people right now are saying no, and about a third of you are using it. So I think this number for yes is just going to grow and grow in the months and years to come for sure. Okay, we have 4 questions here. Our next question, are you leveraging AI for personal or professional tasks the most? Again, I'm going to pause for a few seconds to allow responses to come in. All right, so about half and half, a little bit more for professional, but some for personal as well. I know I personally have used Chat GPT before to help me menu plan because I just got tired of trying to do it myself. Okay, next question. So this is a word map, a word cloud. So what are some of your biggest concerns right now about using AI? Again, I'll pause for responses. The next question is, what most excites you about the future of AI in your industry? And Chloe, are the word clouds on the next slide?
I do not believe they are, but I will gather this data and send it out. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on and diving right in to our questions now for our panelists. I think we lost Lisa, but she'll be hopefully dialing back in just a few minutes. So today marks the last day of Black History Month, and tomorrow starts Women's History Month. And I think one thing a lot of us, I know I spend time doing during these months, is reading and learning about those who came before me. So one thing a lot of our predecessors all had in common is they faced obstacles. So I wanted to ask each of you to share, what is one barrier that you faced in the tech industry, and how did you leverage those experiences to surpass expectations? Erin, would you like to start?
I can start.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty. So some of the challenges. I know there's a little bit of a lag here, but we'll do our best.
Yeah.
So some of the challenges that I faced in the tech of representation, it can be quite isolating when you're the only person who's a female in the room, or you're on a job site, Asian or white area, like in Bellevue, Washington. There's a lot of times where you're eating lunch by yourself, or you're in a meeting and you may not feel so confident to speak up because you're the only female in the room. So some of the things that I've done to overcome that is to really reinforce, like, I know what I'm talking about, make sure my research is done, you know, be tip top with my work. And that's not always a great thing. That's part of having a taxing experience as a Black person in tech, and where you feel that you have to work twice as hard to get the recognition. It's the same thing, it's true, but I've found peace in just knowing that when everything's together, I can back up what I'm saying and kind of like get over those challenges of being a little bit more isolated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Lisa, it looks like we got you back. Did you come back in time to hear the question?
I'm back.
Okay.
I did, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great question. It is definitely a struggle. The barrier, I think, in general is representation, and seeing representation, having representation in the room, the people who are making decisions for access. You know, those people may not be representative of the larger population who could use an advantage, I think, in some situations. So the way that I use those experiences, I think in the most critical way I could offer is just through empathy for that process and trying to inform the spaces that I get to be a part of and how we could improve that posture, and creating an awareness in areas where maybe people weren't quite seeing those structural challenges, to try to make organizations sort of receive those opportunities and become aware of those opportunities.
Yes, excellent, thank you. And Jocelyn, how about you?
Yeah, very similar sentiment. I would say one of the largest barriers to me is that you often find yourself as a person of color or a woman or a minority in tech in general in a situation that either maybe your leader or the decision makers have never experienced, because they haven't, you know, lived a life as a female, or they haven't lived a life as a person of color. And so you present like, hey, this thing happened and, you know, I feel a specific way about it. And they're kind of like, whoa, I can't even imagine. That's just bizarre. I can't even understand that that could take place. And that, you know, kind of increases the barrier. I think that we all are collectively talking about here, because it's not only are you maybe the only one that looks like you, but then also you have to kind of justify those experiences and prove that they're real. So I think the way that I have tried to make that positive is to use that as a platform for education, so that when you get that response of like, whoa, I can't imagine that ever happening, it's like, well, there's a lot of us that it happens to, and like trying to bring awareness and attention to that reality.
Yeah. That actually segues a lot into my next question too, is that in that education piece, and sometimes, like you said, being the only one in the room, do you find that it's hard to make your voice heard in the tech industry? And what are some techniques that you use to share your insight and ideas? And I have a similar question up on the screen as well as a poll for the audience.
I think as far as like having your voice heard in tech, it's interesting because sometimes you're pulled away and called on certain times to have your voice heard. For example, they may have like a DE&I committee where you may come in and make a comment or some type of assessment on a campaign or a design. And that's when my voice I felt was most heard. You know, it's like being in a Zoom call with like directors and designers, engineers, and they're like, is this offensive? And I'm like, yes. So it's like sometimes your voice is amplified in spaces where you know, it's beneficial for the company, but it can still feel taxing for you as a person. And so I've found a way to just kind of reclaim those moments and think more about how it's being helpful for the end user to not have that harm. And kind of think just bigger than myself and how I feel in the moment. And that helps me like process where my voice is strongest at those times.
Nice. Yes, thank you. And it looks like the audience largely shares the same sentiment that yes, it is difficult to have your voice heard in the tech industry as a woman. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit with the questions now. We've been talking about, you know, being a woman in the tech industry, being a person of color in the tech industry, but with AI itself, there's a lot of conversation around it. It's in the headlines, I don't know, it feels like daily. People talk about its longevity, it's here, it's going to stay. It has the capacity to do a lot of great things, and that it's going to have a big impact on our work, you know, how we will or won't be working in the future. So as we think about all of those things, what do you guys see are some of the greatest stumbling blocks in our use of AI? And on the flip side, what is our greatest opportunity of using AI?
Yeah. In terms of, you know, the opportunities with AI, it's a double-edged sword, right? It's a very quickly evolving, very modern, very hot, right? We're having this conversation because it's of interest across multiple business platforms, and things are quite frankly moving so quickly. It can be hard to sort of govern and understand the risks inherent in those things. And obviously central to this conversation, you know, one of those things can be how that data gets compiled, and who designs, you know, your large language models. But the greatest opportunity with that then is also, I think, you know, to, for instance, Aaron's product is the opportunity that you can use to leverage to give a voice, even, you know, to tailor a voice that you think needs to be heard. So, you know, it depends on who is driving the car, you know, what they want to do with that. So I think that's both a positive and could potentially be a negative.
Yeah, no, very good point.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say the biggest concern that I'm seeing right now is that as an industry, we haven't quite figured out how to approach this from a defined ethical perspective, especially depending on which company you're talking about, like what the culture is, what their values are. And those can be in that category of like very personal feeling things that it's kind of hard to bring to the workplace, but then we kind of have to in terms of, to Lisa's point, you know, the potential good, but potential bad, you know, that could happen with this. But at the same time, I do see AI as a potentially democratizing thing where, especially as a developer and engineer, I think it's fantastic that someone could either not know how to program at all or be learning a new language, and to have these tools that make it so rather than having to spend a couple of weeks or a weekend, studying a new language, a new syntax, you can ask GPT or Copilot or whatever your coding AI of choice is and get to a result much more quickly. And I think that there are a lot of examples like that that show the potential value that this technology can bring.
Thanks, Alicia, for bringing up my app. Honestly, the way I think about ChatGPT is only 1% of the journey of trying to add value to the lack of representation in artificial intelligence. So some of the stumbling blocks that I feel are most urgent to address is the lack of literacy in AI for the general public. I don't think that it's healthy. We are consumed by AI, whether that's a biometric, whether that's infused to our Amazon products, or even just going to Google now. There's AI everywhere, just influencing your decision making. And it's being built around a culture of productivity, but not for us, but for companies that can actually afford to invest and integrate that level of compute power. To a community like mine, where we already are exhausted. Nobody's excited to work 3 times as hard for the same pay just because it's easier, and I think some of those ethical implications of augmenting employees with AI are some stumbling blocks that need to be addressed, like you said, on a cultural level, as well as just how we keep it human-centered.
And, yeah, thank you. Hey, we have a new poll question up on the screen, and I'm actually going to ask the same question of the panelists. Has AI helped your career in any way, and how?
Yeah, I would say for me, again, on the technology side, the ability to, especially proof of concept in newer technologies, newer spaces with a lot of the coding companions, that kind of lowers that barrier to entry pretty significantly, as well as on anything where you're writing prose or content or proposals, since that's kind of the theme of today. I think that it just saves us a lot of time, where it's not that it's a task that we wouldn't have been able to do, but you're able to do it much more quickly, especially with the generative AI tools. And I think that just helps save time on more of like the menial work, so that, or like the less exciting, less strategic, more tactical, so that we can spend our time in that more creative space.
Interesting. Okay, let's see what the audience. Oh, the audience is pretty split. Yes and no, or has helped your career. Okay, my next question is for Jocelyn specifically. I've heard about, and I'm excited about, the future rollout of a proposal AI tool that you're building. Can you tell us a little more about it? How did it come to be, and where do you envision it going?
Yeah, absolutely. So when GPT went from 3 to 3.5 to 4, and I was kind of like tracking along with that process to understand, with that progress rather, to kind of understand the potential power of these kind of LLMs. Once 4 came out, and then really all of the big cloud providers started talking about this concept of train an LLM on your own specific data set. You don't have to actually fully retrain a massive model or have the hardware to support it. There are these specific design patterns that allow you to inject your own content, in this specific case, RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. And once I kind of saw that, being someone that's pretty involved in our business development and proposal writing process, I was like, this feels like a really good use case for data that we definitely want to stay private, definitely that is specific to Excella, specific to the work that we do, but that could be really, really helpful in our process, because going into this, we have our strategic growth team that is specific to kind of handling a lot of the business development, and then folks like myself would be pulled in to help contribute to a solution, or write a specific part of a narrative. And that just takes a lot of time, especially for newer consultants that maybe aren't aware of the work that has happened in the past across other contracts, or just, maybe they're just generally new to Excella. And so Proposal AI essentially exists to be a GPT that is specific to the past performances that Excella has completed, and the past proposals that exist, so that we have that information available at our team members' fingertips to be able to more quickly, more accurately, and more strategically respond to RFPs, RFIs, any of the specific solicitations that we might see.
Gosh, that sounds really cool. I remember when I first started off with proposals, my job was the references, and having to collect everything from the people before me that had sort of been lost, that would have been so useful. Yeah. Okay. My next question is a little bit about the customers. We've been talking about our use of it, but how much are you guys seeing customers leveraging AI to support their government or commercial contracts, and what's important to them? And then how can we work to expand their usage of AI?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, when we're looking at, government clients, it's going to be within the limitations of what they're allowed to use a lot of the time. There's definitely an appetite for it. There's definitely an interest in, gaining the advantages that everyone else in, the private sector is going to be able to gain. But as we know, there's a little bit more red tape usually around those things. So even what we do explore, things have to be thoroughly vetted. And so I think having the right people to sort of influence the opportunities with the conversations, people who can make decisions, and then also supporting what we can in terms of getting things vetted or using certain tools in a way that, they can be validated or proven to be safe and compliant with whatever our client needs is probably going to be the most important, just to get over that implementation barrier. But then, beyond that, the customers are probably leveraging, I would imagine, in the same way we are within, our business use cases. So how can we use ChatGPT to help me gather some ideas about how to, better word this particular document, or what's the background on this particular item that I need to brief about, or can I use this in, some research capacity? I think in the traditional way, it would be the same as it's currently available, but there are definitely opportunities, just like Jocelyn mentioned, for future impacts, not just in, consulting themselves, but also with clients and the way they manage healthcare, the way they answer service tickets for IT. A whole breadth could be opened once we get validated, secure sources of data.
Excellent, thank you. Okay. And Lisa, I have one more question for you as well. This is one of my favorite topics when I talk about technology, because I just think it's so interesting, so many avenues to discuss and debate, and that's the ethical usage of technology. It gets a lot less attention, I think, than what can the technology do, what are the advancements, but from your perspective, what are some things that we should all consider with the ethical usage of AI?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the original idea of, who controls the data, who are the decision makers, who are the people who are training your models, what is the goal of the audience they're trying to influence. And in the same way we do data analytics, and we can show you the visualization that supports the decision, that you want to make with the level of transparency that you'd like. That's just the truth of the situation. We can do the same thing, typically with AI, depending on how we train those models. Or we can be completely exclusive of certain data that, people are just somewhat unconsciously blind to. So those are two, I think, major considerations, just in terms of, it being a little bit of a Wild West. So validating, the data sources that you're choosing for your models. And I'm sure Jocelyn could speak to that as well, like making sure that those data sources are vetted, that we have a reputable source from which we're pulling models if we're using additional models. And I think also sharing this process with other agencies is always, in my opinion, in best interest, because we can learn from each other as rapidly, or at least in attempt to, as rapidly as the technology is evolving, so we can keep each other accountable in that process.
Thank you. Okay. So I have some closing remarks, but we also have some time for Q&A. So I'm going to pull that box up now. We have for 2 or 3 questions from the audience here. Okay. All right, so the first question that came in is from Allison, and she asks, what are your thoughts about accuracy? We hear this is still an issue.
Yeah, I'm going to interpret that question as like accuracy of the results of the model or what we're, receiving back from any of these AI tools. And to me, a lot of it is just putting the emphasis on that human in the loop review to understand the accuracy of what you're getting back from something, whether it's an off-the-shelf product or something that you've built internally. Because at the end of the day, like the same way that there is human error, I assume that there's going to be, an error in the response from some of these tools that we're using. And I think that's where we can never push for a world that there aren't, humans involved in these processes and that it's all AI. That's what makes it our role in it that much more important, because we do have to validate and verify not only the data going into Lisa's point, but also what the outputs are.
Yeah, I know, kind of just an anecdote on that. I thought it was so interesting. It was during the Super Bowl, there were articles coming out, people were asking AI, what's the score? And it was spitting back information that the game had like already ended, and here's the score, and like specific stats of what had happened. It was very believable, but the game wasn't even halfway finished yet. So it's definitely still an issue and something to look at and to validate. Yeah. Okay. Next question that came in is, what is the name of the proposal software that the young one on the top right is the CEO of? So I think that was probably talking about Aaron, who had to leave early. And the name of it is Chat Black GPT. And our third question that came in, it says, when it comes to prompting, are you spending time learning how to prompt? Do you have the time to add it to your skill set?
I definitely think you should take advantage of multiple resources which are currently available in terms of learning about prompting and to skill prompting. One of the things that I do personally in professional situations, the people that I network with who leverage AI tools or, Chat GPT generally, I'm always asking about their prompts if they get interesting or insightful or unique results. I want to know, sort of what their design was and what they used. But that's definitely, I think, a new skill to add to the resume in terms of developing your ability to prompt, understanding what works for the tool you use as well, because I think everybody's familiar, with the Microsoft Chat GPT, but there are obviously other opportunities to leverage AI in those spaces that might be, specific to your organization or specific to your use case. So any kind of, I think that you can leverage in just terms of exploration, leverage with that outside education could probably really assist that and be beneficial for everyone at your organization. I definitely also would say it doesn't take a lot of time, but you do have to be curious.
Okay, so I have one closing question for you before we leave. So the last question is, if you could wave a wand and make anything possible, I'm sure you would do lots of things, but in the world of AI, how would you establish AI practices for either your company, your customer, or the whole world? It's a big question.
For me, I would just really hope for a almost scientific method approach where we don't know what the end result is going to be. We don't know what this is going to look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and that's just going to continue to be a moving target that we can't predict. And so that's where safe experimentation, human in the loop processes, and just constantly educating and then evaluating and then educating it again and then evaluating again becomes really important. I don't think that we exist in a time that you can just apply, a specific framework and say, I'm going to do these 5 steps and then I will have successfully implemented AI. It's just changing too quickly. And so to me, it's more about taking that principles-based approach where we care about ethics, we care about humans before we care about, AI, and that we're making sure that we are all curious and excited learners about this, but that we're approaching it from a safe perspective.
Lisa?
Yep, I'm gonna stand behind that. And honestly, unpopular opinion, the only thing that I would add, as much as I love continuous improvement, I believe that this is a particular tool that in the wrong hands could do a lot of damage. So I would hold the reins a little bit more with governance before we have access. But that's, like I say, that's unpopular opinion, but that is, to me, to err some of the offsets, I would want to protect people. That's just my nature. So there's a lot that can be done now with these tools by malicious actors as well. And those are the things I would really want to make sure that we are policing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. Yeah. Okay. Well, that wraps up for today. I want to thank you all for participating in today's session. I've definitely thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and learned a lot. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Yes, I just want to go ahead and note our next session coming up is going to be with Unica Walcott. She's going to be discussing leveraging AI, which is something that Lisa mentioned. So if that is something you're interested in, that is the upcoming session. Please fill out our survey, give us your feedback. And yeah, thank you all for joining us. And thank you to Lisa, Jocelyn, and Laura for speaking with us today. And have a great day, everyone.